The members of the IBEW Local 1245 are legally protected by contracts with over 270 companies, with wages and benefits that lead the utility industry. But how did they achieve this power? This is the story of workers challenging their employers, of labor's ongoing struggle to organize in a fight for better wages, safer working conditions, secure employment, and in short, a better world. With IBEW Local 151 dismantled, many linemen questioned the leadership of Frank McNulty, who they saw as too conservative and too cautious. James J. Reid, the first Grand Vice President, emerged at the head of this opposition. Reid, a Pennsylvania lineman, was a witty and popular figure at union gatherings, but he was also a serious union man who abhorred the cruelty of industrial capitalism, which he equated with child slavery and the degradation of manhood. Reid favored industrial unionism and believed that a good union man never quit a strike until the strike is won. Reid often clashed with the more timid McNulty. In 1908, Reid called a special convention behind McNulty's back, falsely claiming that McNulty was recovering from an operation and was unable to attend. In McNulty's absence, Reid prevailed in a leadership vote and ousted McNulty as Grand President. The Reid IBEW, which favored a more aggressive approach toward utilities, quickly won the loyalty of most organized electrical workers, especially linemen. The McNulty IBEW attracted fewer members, but had the advantage of being officially recognized by the American Federation of Labor, the AFL. The AFL was the largest organization of unions in the United States, but its leader, Samuel Gompers, shared McNulty's distaste for industrial unionism. He also distrusted Reid as a dangerous radical. But the linemen of San Francisco liked Reid's approach, and they applied for a charter with the IBEW. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, IBEW Local 151 was back in business. Brotherhood was more than just a slogan to these early linemen. It was a survival skill, as lineman George Hayne learned when a live line in Oakland, California sent 65,000 volts of electricity through his body. A third of his skin was burned. Doctors said his condition was hopeless. But every member of his local offered to undergo the knife. More than 20 members donated a combined 22 feet of skin, and Hayne made a recovery that doctors considered miraculous. But the real miracle was solidarity. Loyal to each other and bold in bargaining, the members of IBEW 151 soon became the largest local in the Reid IBEW. By 1913, they were ready to experiment with industrial unionism on a larger scale, and the target was Pacific Gas and Electric, which was by then a corporate giant. Local 151 created a new labor organization at PG&E, the Light and Power Council of California, which would bargain for gas workers, machinists, boilermakers, stationary firemen, and linemen. Its leader was a top official in the Reid IBEW, Portland lineman William S. Junkin. Seeking concessions on worker safety and on wages, the council voted 8-1 in favor of striking. Initially, PG&E agreed to negotiate, but the talks went nowhere. And by early May, with a midnight strike deadline approaching, PG&E General Manager John Britton made it clear that there would be no deal. The next morning, PG&E workers across the state walked off their jobs and the strike began. While worker unity posed a serious challenge to PG&E, not all workers supported the strike. The steam engineers were part of the San Francisco Building Trades Council, which was aligned with the McNulty IBEW and strongly opposed to the strike. The IBEW was a house divided against itself. P.H. McCarthy, the president of the Building Trades Council, who years later was found taking payoffs from PG&E, put it bluntly. If a request to return to work should not be complied with, the council will simply fill the vacant places. In other words, support the strike, lose your job. 2 weeks in, the McNulty IBEW offered a secret deal to PG&E to subvert their common enemy, Reid's Local 151, by providing PG&E the workers it needed to keep operating. Strikers were furious. Undermined, they offered to return to work in exchange for a recognition of the Light and Power Council as the workers' bargaining representative. But PG&E General Manager John Britton refused. Historian Charles Marsh wrote that the work of a lineman fostered a rather independent, irresponsible, reckless type of individual whom both employers and union officials have found difficult to control. Facing probable defeat, some striking linemen began taking direct action against PG&E equipment. Outages spread. The unlit streets became a dangerous battleground for strikers and scabs alike. There were fistfights, knife fights, and gunfights. Transmission towers blew up. Power plants burned down. But with the IBEW bitterly divided, the strike was losing momentum, and PG&E obtained an injunction against the strikers. AFL leader Samuel Gompers delivered the final blow. In November, 6 months into the strike, the AFL officially endorsed the McNulty-IBEW side agreement with PG&E and forbade other unions from supporting the strike. Under pressure from Gompers, the members of the council's various unions decided by a 3-2 vote to call off the strike 8 months after it began. One of the longest and most violent utility strikes in American history was over. The push for industrial unionism was defeated, and McNulty emerged, again, as the sole IBEW leader. The strike's leaders were blacklisted from PG&E. President James J. Reid experienced a breakdown and was committed to a mental institution in 1913. He died soon afterwards. Despite its flaws, the PG&E strike of 1913 is remembered as one of the great industrial actions of its era. It demonstrated that workers could unite on an industrial basis and achieve the strength necessary to stand up to a large corporation, paving the way for a renaissance of industrial unionism that would flourish a generation later. One of the first groups of workers to benefit would be the Hello Girls.
When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise right out of the ground. Ain't no grave can hold my body down. There ain't no grave can hold my body down.